Yeah, for us, it's been a journey, and I would say we started embedding ESG into our lending processes about 5 years ago. And that was before we had the S1 and S2. So we've done most of the trainings, have policies on the environmental and social aspect. And we all know that when we talk about S2 is just climate, which has been edged out of the E part. But before the S1 and S2, what happened in the Kenyan banking sector is that in 2021, the regulator, Central Bank of Kenya, issued climate risk management guidance. So we were supposed to be giving quarterly reports on how we are managing that risk within the banks. So for the banks that really looked at that and gave returns to CBK in relation to the climate guidance, when S1, S2 came in, it was much easier because the pillars, although they were founded on the TCFD, they were still the same with what we have in S1 and S2. So recently, when we got the S1 and S2, we have really had a lot of support from the Central Bank of Kenya and the Kenya Bankers Association, which is the body that works with the banks mainly. So the Kenya Bankers Association has been able to train banks on these standards quite a lot. We've had, I think, almost 4 or 5 sessions. And then they were also able to develop a template to guide the banks on how to report on S1 and S2. So that is the Kenya Bankers Association. And then on the other hand, the regulator, which is the CBK, helped us to come up with a green taxonomy for Kenya, what we are calling the KGFT, the Kenya Green Finance Taxonomy. So for everyone who is claiming that we are green or we are funding sustainability, then it has to align with that taxonomy, which is almost mirrored against the EU taxonomy. So that is helping us mainly still with the S2. For the S1, when the S1 and S2, when the guidance or the roadmap was issued by ISPAC, CBK or Central Bank of Kenya, the regulator for the banks, also gave us a roadmap about 2 months ago on how we are now going to start reporting. And we have been given a self-assessment tool, which each bank is supposed to assess their readiness for the mandatory reporting. And it's tiered. For the big banks, they're supposed to report to do the self-assessment by June. Mid banks like us, we are supposed to give the self-assessment by September, and then the smaller banks by December. And that has also gone into 2026 when the CBK requires the banks to give mandatory reporting, big banks by June 2026, medium banks September, and the other banks by December. But what would I say as a family bank? How have we gone about this? The first thing you need to do is to do gap analysis, gap assessment, to know where you are. As much as you were doing the ESG, also implementing the CBK guidance, now you need to properly align with the S1 and S2. That is what we first did. And it took almost 8 months using a consultant to really talk to different teams, get to understand what is there, and understanding, look at our data collection tools, are they sufficient? Look at our portfolio, what is in the portfolio? Do we really need to have any decarbonizing plan, or are we already green? So from that whole assessment, we now have a transition plan. Where do we need to go from here? And from the transition plan, I know I've seen a question pop up about the green products. Now, the transition plan is where we have now said, now, this is where we are in the green agenda. We need to revamp what we have so that our products can speak into the green space. And remember, if there are bankers in the call, we are already leading to these people, because if you have people doing solar, doing biodigesters, climate smart agri, we only need to tag these businesses and start now increasing the numbers in a deliberate way. So that is what we are doing. And we are now on phase 2, where we are having the transition plan. And phase 2 is more of green finance with a lot of capacity building and aligning our products. We wouldn't say we are developing new products. I would say it's aligning, because new products will be very difficult to sell. But if you say you have trade finance and say anybody who is bringing in solar panels will be tagged as green. Anybody who is doing biodigesters will be tagged as green. So that is within the existing products, but we have a preposition that will help us tag those clients. So in terms of challenges, this is a new concept, and the traditional banker does not really understand what's all about climate and lending. But the best way to look at this is to really connect how ESG and climate, S1 and S2, how these risks can also impact the traditional risks: credit risk, reputation, liability risk. We keep saying ESG and climate are not new risks. They become risks by impacting the normal risks that we understand. So when you tell a business person that if we are funding farmers and there's a lot of maybe physical risks, there's no farm produce, then the loan will not be paid. That is the language they will understand. Then we also tell them we are not also people who are talking about risk only. There are also opportunities within these risks. So try to show them that if a business is suffering a lot because of maybe power outages, they can do solar to be able to solve that problem and be able to continue producing. So we try also to show that there are also opportunities within the S1 and S2, and that's where we are coming now with product alignment to show them how they can cover these risks with different products. So we're working a lot, because this is even for us. Personally, I'm trained in climate and ESG, but I do not know everything. So we're using a lot of consultants, because you need to also show the finance people, how do we stress test? What scenarios do we use? How do we decarbonize? So we're using a lot of consultants. And then within the branch networks, we also use what we call climate champions, people who are interested in this agenda, within different branches, within different units, to just also help this, explain this agenda and ensure it's a culture within the bank.